Commander Hyun-woo stood in the vast assembly hall of Axiom Prime, feeling smaller than he had ever felt in his life. The station floated in neutral space, a massive structure built by alien hands thousands of years before humans even discovered fire. Around him, representatives from 47 different species watched with eyes that held no warmth. Some had eyes like crystals, others had compound vision arrays. A few had no eyes at all but sensed the world in ways humans could barely understand. The year was 2847, and humanity had finally done it. They had built ships that could travel faster than light. They had reached the stars. They had found the galactic congregation, and now they stood before it, hoping to join the community of advanced civilizations that ruled the cosmos. Dr. Ji-won stood beside Hyun-woo, her hands gripping a data tablet so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Behind them, Captain Tae-yang and his crew waited in formal dress uniforms representing Earth's finest. They had practiced this moment for months. They had prepared speeches, demonstrations, and gifts from humanity's greatest achievements. None of it mattered. The Supreme Chancellor, a being called Vector, rose from the central dais. His body was made of living crystal that reflected light in cold, geometric patterns. When he spoke, his voice resonated through the chamber like breaking glass. Every word cut through the air with absolute precision. So, Vector said, these are the humans. The species that stumbled upon faster-than-light travel through accident and desperation, rather than methodical progress. Laughter rippled through the assembly. Not human laughter, but alien sounds that still carried the unmistakable tone of mockery. Clicks, whistles, harmonic vibrations that made Hyun-woo's chest tighten. We come in peace, Hyun-woo said, his voice steady despite everything. Earth wishes to join the congregation as partners in exploration and progress. Partners? Vector tilted his crystalline head. You misunderstand your position. Let me explain what humanity truly is. The Chancellor gestured and holographic displays materialized above the assembly floor. Images of Earth appeared, cycling through scenes of human history. Wars, conflicts, cities burning. People fighting over resources, borders, beliefs. You are a species that wages war against itself, Vector said. Even now, even after achieving space travel, you maintain separate nations, separate governments, separate tribes. The congregation achieved unity millions of years ago. We operate as one. You operate as chaos. Ji-won stepped forward. We've achieved great things despite our differences. Our diversity has driven innovation and creativity. We've created art, music, literature that expresses the breadth of human experience. Art? Another alien spoke up, this one from the Kryn military faction. His crystalline body was darker than Vector's, shot through with veins of deep red. You waste resources on making noise and images while more advanced species focus on physics, mathematics, and engineering. It's not waste, Ji-won insisted. It's part of what makes us human. Our emotions drive us to explore, to create, to push beyond limitations. Emotions. Vector spoke the word like it tasted foul. Yes, we have observed your species' dependence on these chemical reactions. You make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. You act impulsively. You are inefficient in every measurable way. Hyun-woo felt anger rising in his chest but forced it down. Showing emotion now would only prove their point. We've survived. We've grown. We've reached the stars. That has to count for something. Survival is expected, Vector said. Even primitive species survive. The question is whether you have anything to offer the congregation, whether you deserve to stand among truly advanced civilizations. Tae-yang moved to the presentation console. We'd like to show you what humanity has achieved. Our culture, our accomplishments, our potential as members of the galactic community. The displays shifted. Images of Earth's greatest works appeared. The pyramids, the Great Wall, modern cities gleaming in sunlight, space stations orbiting Mars and Jupiter, and then, most importantly to the human delegation, examples of human artistic achievement, paintings by the old masters, sculptures that captured the human form in perfect detail, recordings of orchestras playing symphonies that had moved billions of people to tears. The assembly watched in silence. As a recording of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony played through the hall, Hyun-woo watched the alien faces for any sign of understanding or appreciation. He saw nothing but indifference. When the presentation ended, Vector turned to confer with other council members. The insectoid Velmar representative leaned in, antennae twitching in strange patterns. The reptilian Sarth delegation hissed in their own language. The energy beings from the outer rim pulsed with colors that meant nothing to human eyes. Finally, Vekthor turned back to face them. "The congregation has reached a decision," he said. "Humanity will be granted observer status. You may watch our proceedings and learn from your betters. You will be assigned territories for resource extraction, mining operations primarily, raw materials that more capable species will refine into useful technology." "Observer status?" Hyunwoo's voice cracked despite his best efforts. "No voting rights? No seat at the council?" "You have not earned such privileges," Vekthor said simply. "Perhaps in a few thousand years, if you manage to evolve beyond your emotional limitations and tribal divisions, we may reconsider. Until then, you will serve the congregation in the capacity we deem appropriate." "This isn't right," Taeyang said, stepping forward. "We came here as equals." "You came here as supplicants," the red-veined Kryn military commander said. "And you have been judged. Be grateful we permit you to exist in congregation space at all." Some argued for simply quarantining your species to your home system until you either destroy yourselves or grow up. Ji-won touched Hyunwoo's arm gently. He looked at her and saw the defeat in her eyes. They had prepared for many possible outcomes, but not this. Not complete dismissal. Not being treated like children by species who saw them as barely above animals. "The assembly is concluded," Vekthor announced. "The human delegation will be escorted to temporary quarters. You will receive your mining assignments within one standard cycle. Welcome to the congregation, humans. Try not to disappoint us further." The aliens filed out of the chamber in orderly processions, their movements synchronized and efficient. No one spoke to the humans. No one offered sympathy or even acknowledgement. They were insects beneath the notice of giants. Hyunwoo and his team stood alone in the vast hall, surrounded by technology they barely understood, in a station built by species who saw them as primitives playing with toys. Later, in their assigned quarters, the delegation gathered to process what had happened. Taeyang paced angrily. Ji-won sat at a console, reviewing recordings of the assembly with methodical focus. Others sat in shocked silence. "This can't be all we are," Hyunwoo said quietly. "There has to be something they're not seeing, something they missed." Ji-won looked up from her console, her eyes suddenly focused. "Hyunwoo, come look at this." He moved to her side and watched as she replayed a moment from the assembly. During a technical malfunction, a few seconds of human music had played through the hall's speakers before being cut off. In that brief moment, Ji-won had isolated one species' reaction, the Velmar representative. The insectoid beings with their delicate antennae. When the music played, their antennae had moved in complex patterns, vibrating in ways Ji-won had never seen in any of her xenological studies. "They felt something," Ji-won whispered. "I don't know what, but they reacted to our music. Everyone else ignored it, but the Velmar noticed." Hyunwoo leaned closer to the screen, watching the alien's antennae dance to music it shouldn't have cared about. "Maybe," he said slowly. "Maybe they're wrong about us. Maybe what they see as weakness is actually something else." "Maybe," Ji-won agreed, her scientific mind already racing with possibilities. "But we need to understand what that means. And we need to do it before we spend the next 1,000 years mining asteroids for species that think we're worthless." Outside the viewport, the stars stretched in all directions, beautiful and cold and indifferent. Somewhere out there, humanity's future waited to be written. The question was whether they would write it on their own terms or accept the role the galaxy had assigned them. Hyunwoo looked at his team, at Earth's best and brightest, and made a decision. "We're not done yet. We're going to show them what humans really are. We just need to figure out how." 3 months had passed since the humiliation at Axiom Prime. The crew of the Perseverance floated through the outer reaches, a region of space filled with dead stars and asteroid fields rich in minerals the congregation needed. This was humanity's assigned role now: miners, laborers, the lowest rung on the galactic ladder. Captain Taeyang stared at the viewscreen, watching mining drones harvest chunks of rock from an asteroid belt. The work was mindless, automated, beneath the capabilities of his ship and crew. But orders were orders, and Earth needed to maintain its fragile position with the congregation. Another successful load processed, Engineer Somin reported from her station. She was young, brilliant, and utterly wasted on this assignment. Before joining the crew, she had designed acoustic systems for concert halls across Asia. Now she calibrated mining equipment. Ready for transport to Processing Station 7. Wonderful, Taeyang muttered. I'm sure they're grateful for our contribution. In the crew quarters below, pilot Jae-sung lay on his bunk, earbuds in, listening to music from Earth. He had always been a rebel, the kind of pilot who pushed every regulation to its limit. These days he played old symphonies and concertos through his personal system, remembering when humanity had been proud of such things, before the galaxy had told them their art was worthless noise. Commander Hyunwoo and Dr. Jiwon worked in the ship's small research lab, analyzing data from their congregation interactions. They had been given a job to do, but that didn't mean they had to stop thinking, stop questioning, stop searching for answers. There has to be something we're missing, Jiwon said, scrolling through xenological reports. The Velmar reaction to our music wasn't random. It meant something. Maybe they just have sensitive hearing, Hyunwoo suggested, though he didn't believe it himself. Before Jiwon could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Both of them rushed to the bridge where Taeyang was already pulling up diagnostic screens. What happened? Hyunwoo demanded. Mining drones are malfunctioning, So-min reported, her fingers flying across her console, all of them simultaneously. They're moving in strange patterns like they're responding to some kind of signal. What signal? We're in deep space. Taeyang checked the readings and then looked at his crew with confusion. It's coming from inside our ship. From crew quarters. They found Jae-sung in his bunk, music still playing. He pulled out his earbuds, looking guilty. Sorry, was I being too loud? I know regulations say to keep personal entertainment systems on low volume during operations, but that's not the issue, Hyunwoo interrupted. Your music is interfering with the mining drones. That's impossible, Jae-sung said. It's just Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. I was playing it through the external communication array as a joke. You know, broadcasting human culture into the void. Nobody's listening anyway. So Min's eyes went wide. You broadcast it externally. Wait, pull up the drone positioning data. They gathered in the lab, watching as So-min overlaid the drone movements with the music's waveforms. The correlation was impossible to deny. When certain frequencies played, the drones shifted position. When the music swelled, the asteroids themselves seemed to vibrate in response. This doesn't make sense, Taeyang said. Sound waves shouldn't work in vacuum, and even if they did, they shouldn't affect solid objects like this. Jiwon leaned closer to the screen, her scientific mind racing. Unless it's not about sound waves in the traditional sense. What if the music is creating some kind of harmonic resonance with the crystalline structures in the asteroids? The communication array converts audio into electromagnetic signals, So-min added, excitement creeping into her voice. When those signals interact with the minerals in the asteroids, maybe they create gravitational microfluctuations. The drones are responding to those fluctuations. Hyunwoo felt something stirring in his chest. Hope, maybe. Or the beginning of understanding. Test it. Do it again, but this time measure everything. Every possible variable. For the next 6 hours, Jae-sung played different pieces of music through the external array while So-min recorded data. Each composition created different effects. Mozart caused gentle ripples in the asteroid field. Rock music from the 21st century created chaotic but powerful vibrations. A traditional Korean pansori performance made the asteroids align in precise geometric patterns. It's not just the frequencies, Jiwon said, reviewing the data. It's the complexity of the waveforms. Human music is created through emotional expression, not mathematical formulas. We don't calculate the perfect note progression. We feel it, and somehow, that emotional randomness creates patterns that pure mathematical compositions would never generate. The congregation species all use logic to create their communication signals, Hyunwoo said slowly. Perfect mathematical progressions, predictable, efficient, but also limited to certain parameters. Exactly, So-min agreed. But human music is chaotic. It breaks rules. It creates unexpected harmonics that interact with matter at the quantum level. The aliens never discovered this because they never explored these frequency patterns. They dismissed them as irrational noise. Taeyang stood up, a grin spreading across his face. They mocked us for making art while they made tools. But what if our art is a tool, the most powerful tool in the galaxy, and they never even knew it existed? The implications hung in the air. If human music could manipulate matter at the quantum level, what else could it do? Could it solve problems that conventional technology couldn't? Could it be the thing that made humanity valuable to the congregation? But before they could explore further, a priority message arrived from Axiom Prime. Official congregation communication, marked urgent. Hyunwoo opened it and read the message aloud. This is Supreme Chancellor Vekthor. All human vessels are ordered to cease unauthorized experimental activities immediately. Reports of unusual energy signatures emanating from human ships have been detected. Failure to comply will result in sanctions and possible revocation of observer status. They're watching us, Ji-won said quietly. Of course they are, Tae-yang replied. We're the primitive species that needs supervision. They probably monitor everything we do. Hyunwoo made a decision. Officially, we comply. No more external broadcasts, no more visible experiments. But unofficially, we continue this research. Quietly, carefully. We need to understand what we've discovered. That's risky, Ji-won warned. If they catch us disobeying direct orders, they've already decided we're worthless, Hyunwoo interrupted. What more can they do to us? At least this way. We might find something that proves them wrong. So-min nodded. I can modify the sensors to mask our experimental signatures. Make it look like normal mining operations. Do it, Hyunwoo ordered. For the next 2 weeks, the Perseverance conducted dual operations. Publicly, they mined asteroids and sent resources to congregation processing stations. Secretly, they explored the relationship between human music and matter manipulation. They discovered that different emotional tones in music created different physical effects. Sad, melancholic compositions could slow molecular vibration. Angry, intense music could accelerate it. Complex symphonies could create precise gravitational patterns that no technology could replicate. It was So-min who made the breakthrough. I think I can build a device that amplifies these effects. If we channel music through a specially designed array, we could manipulate matter on a larger scale. Move asteroids, stabilize unstable structures, maybe even affect gravitational fields. That's theoretical, Ji-won said, though her eyes shone with excitement. Everything's theoretical until we prove it, Jae-sung pointed out. They were building the prototype when the distress call came through. It was a congregation science vessel, the Axiom Explorer, trapped near a collapsing spatial anomaly close to a black hole. 300 alien scientists were aboard, and they had less than 6 hours before the anomaly tore their ship apart. The congregation's fleet was too far away to mount a rescue in time. Hyunwoo listened to the distress call, hearing the panic in the translator's voice. These were the same species who had mocked humanity, who had relegated them to mining operations, who had called them primitive and worthless, but 300 lives were 300 lives. Tae-yang looked at his commander. The anomaly is 2 hours away at maximum speed. We could reach them. With what? Ji-won asked. We don't have technology that can stabilize a spatial anomaly. The congregation's own scientists can't solve it. Hyunwoo looked at the prototype device So-min had been building, the one that could amplify music into gravitational effects. It was untested, theoretical. It might not work at all, but it was the only chance those scientists had. Prepare the ship for maximum acceleration, Hyunwoo ordered. So-min finished that device. Jae-sung, find music that can stabilize chaos. We're going to do something very stupid. Finally, Tae-yang grinned. I was getting tired of mining. As the Perseverance turned toward the black hole in the dying ship, Hyunwoo sent a message to Axiom Prime. This is Commander Hyunwoo of Earth Vessel Perseverance. We are responding to distress call from Axiom Explorer, attempting rescue operation. The response came quickly, Vekthor's crystalline voice sharp with command. Human vessel, you do not have clearance for rescue operations. Return to your assigned duties, with respect. The Perseverance raced through space at speeds that made the hull groan with stress. On the view screen, the spatial anomaly grew larger with each passing minute. It looked like a wound in reality itself, a twisted mess of gravitational forces that pulled and pushed in ways that violated every law of physics the congregation understood. The Axiom Explorer hung at the edge of the anomaly, its hull already starting to buckle. 300 scientists from a dozen different species waited inside, their distress calls growing more desperate by the minute. Hyunwoo stood on the bridge, watching the readings that made no sense. The anomaly wasn't just collapsing. It was chaotic, changing patterns every few seconds. No algorithm could predict its movements. No conventional technology could counteract it. 4 hours until the Explorer breaks apart, Somin reported from engineering. Her voice was steady, but Hyunwoo could hear the tension underneath. The prototype amplification device is ready, but I have no idea if it will work. What's the theory? Tae-young asked, bringing the Perseverance into position at a safe distance from the anomaly. If human music can create gravitational microfluctuations in asteroid fields, Somin explained, then maybe if we amplify the signal enough, we can create macro fluctuations that counteract the anomaly's chaos. Think of it like noise-canceling technology, but for gravity. That's insane, Jiwon said, but she was already pulling up data on her console. But it might work. The anomaly is chaotic because it's responding to random quantum fluctuations near the black hole. If we could introduce a counter pattern, something equally complex but inverse to the chaos, we might stabilize it, Hyunwoo finished. The question is, what music could possibly match that level of complexity? That's when Ha-yoon stepped forward. She was a civilian, a cultural liaison who had joined the delegation to represent Earth's artistic heritage. Before the mission, she had been a concert pianist performing in the greatest halls of Seoul and Vienna. Now she looked at the anomaly with the eyes of an artist seeing a challenge. No pre-recorded music will work, Ha-yoon said quietly. The anomaly is constantly changing. Whatever we play needs to change with it, to respond to it, to have a conversation with it. You mean improvise? Jae-sung asked. While 300 lives hang in the balance? Music has always been a conversation, Ha-yoon replied. Between the musician and the instrument, between the composer and the audience, between emotion and expression. If this anomaly is chaos, then I need to feel that chaos and respond to it, not with logic, with intuition. Hyunwoo studied her face. She was scared. They all were, but underneath the fear he saw determination. Can you do it? I don't know, Ha-yoon admitted. But I'm the only chance those people have, so I'd better try. So-min led Ha-yoon to the modified console she had built. It looked like a musical keyboard merged with alien technology, wires and circuits connecting to the ship's external communication array. When Ha-yoon touched the keys, the sounds would be converted into gravitational waves and projected directly at the anomaly. On the Axiom Explorer, the alien scientists watched their sensors with growing horror. They had tried everything in their technological arsenal. Gravitational dampeners, quantum stabilizers, antimatter pulses. Nothing worked. The anomaly simply absorbed or deflected every attempt to control it. Then they detected the human ship approaching. What are they doing here? The expedition leader, a Kryn scientist named Torvald, demanded. They don't have the capability to help us. His assistant, a young Kryn named Sekmar, checked the readings. They're positioning themselves between us and the anomaly. They're broadcasting something, some kind of energy signature I've never seen before. On Axiom Prime, Vector and the Congregation Council watched the events unfold through long-range sensors. The Supreme Chancellor's crystalline form remained still, but inside, calculations ran at impossible speeds. The humans should not be there. They should not be attempting a rescue. They should certainly not be trying whatever they were trying. What are they broadcasting? A Velmar counselor asked, antennae twitching with agitation. Unknown energy pattern, a technician reported. It's similar to their communication signals, but amplified to levels that should tear their ship apart. Recall them immediately, the red-veined military commander Vorkan demanded. They're violating direct orders and endangering themselves uselessly. But Vector raised a crystalline hand. Wait. Let us observe what the humans believe they can accomplish. On the Perseverance, Ha-yoon closed her eyes and placed her hands on the keys. She could feel the anomaly through the ship's sensors, fed directly into her consciousness through a neural link So-min had rigged. It felt like standing in a storm, being pulled in 1,000 directions at once. She began to play. The first notes were tentative, searching. She wasn't trying to fight the anomaly. She was trying to understand it. To feel its rhythm, its pattern, its mood. And slowly, incredibly, she began to sense something underneath the chaos. A heartbeat, a pulse, a fundamental frequency that drove all the random variations. The anomaly responded. The gravitational waves shifted slightly, as if acknowledging the music. Ha-yoon pressed forward, her fingers dancing across the keys. She played sad notes, mournful and deep, and the anomaly's violent spikes softened. She played angry notes, sharp and discordant, and the anomaly's chaotic twists began to synchronize. It's working, Jiwon whispered, watching the readings. The anomaly is stabilizing. Not much, but measurably. The explorer's hull stress is decreasing, Taeyang reported. They have more time, but Haiyun barely heard them. She was lost in the music, in the conversation between human emotion and cosmic chaos. She could feel tears streaming down her face from the effort, from the overwhelming sensation of touching something so vast and ancient and wild. The anomaly wasn't just physics. It was alive in its way. It was the universe expressing itself raw and unfiltered. And for the first time in its existence, something was speaking back to it in a language it understood. On the Explorer, Sekmar watched the sensors in amazement. The anomaly is responding to their broadcast. It's actually communicating with them. Impossible, Torval said, but his voice lacked conviction. The data was clear. The human signal was doing what congregation technology could not. Haiyun played for 3 hours. Her hands cramped. Her back ached. Her mind felt like it was being pulled apart by the sheer complexity of maintaining the musical conversation. But she didn't stop. Every time she thought she couldn't continue, she remembered the 300 lives depending on her. She changed the music as the anomaly changed. When it grew violent, she played intensity that matched its fury. When it calmed, she played gentle melodies that encouraged the peace. When it seemed confused, she played clear, simple themes that offered direction. Slowly, impossibly, the anomaly began to collapse safely. Its chaotic patterns smoothed into regular oscillations. Its gravitational spikes diminished. The wound in space began to heal. So-Min amplified the signal further, pushing the equipment to its absolute limits. Sparks flew from consoles. Warning alarms screamed. But the music continued, projected into the void with power that made the stars themselves seem to vibrate in sympathy. On Axiom Prime, the Council watched in stunned silence. What they were seeing shouldn't be possible. Music was noise. Emotion was inefficiency. Art was waste. And yet before their sensors, human art was solving a problem that had defeated their greatest scientific minds. How? Vorkan demanded. How are they doing this? They're not using logic. Ji-won's voice came through the open communication channel, broadcasting to anyone watching. They're using something your species forgot. Intuition, emotion, the ability to feel rather than calculate. The anomaly isn't a math problem. It's a living force, and you can't solve life with equations. You have to speak to it in the language it understands. Vekthor leaned forward, his crystalline eyes fixed on the display. His offspring Sekmar was on that doomed ship. He had calculated the rescue as impossible, had prepared himself for loss. But now, against all probability, the humans were succeeding. After 3.5 hours, Haiyun played the final notes. A soft, gentle melody that spoke of rest and peace and ending. The anomaly responded one last time, its gravitational fluctuations smoothing to nothing. Then it collapsed completely, folding back into normal spacetime as if it had never existed. The Explorer was free. Haiyun slumped over the console, exhausted beyond measure. So-Min caught her before she fell, helping her to a chair. The musician's hands were shaking, her face pale with fatigue, but she was smiling. Did it work? Haiyun asked weakly. See for yourself, Hyunwoo said, pointing to the view screen. The Explorer was moving under its own power, limping away from the black hole toward safety. All 300 scientists alive and unharmed. Saved by human music, saved by emotion, saved by art that the galaxy had called worthless. Hyunwoo opened a channel to Axiom Prime. This is Commander Hyunwoo. The rescue is complete. All scientists are safe. We're returning to our assigned duties now. There was a long silence. Then Vekthor's voice came through, and for the first time, it held something other than contempt. It held uncertainty. Commander Hyunwoo, the Congregation Council wishes to speak with you immediately. Are we in trouble for disobeying Order Another? 2 weeks after the rescue of the Axiom Explorer, the galaxy was divided. Half the Congregation species wanted to study humanity's discovery. The other half insisted it was a fluke, an accident that meant nothing. Conservative factions argued that accepting human methods would undermine everything the Congregation stood for. Progressive factions argued that ignoring evidence was the opposite of logical. Hyunwoo had given 3 presentations to various scientific councils, explaining how human music created gravitational effects through emotional complexity rather than mathematical precision. Each time he faced skepticism, wonder, and outright hostility in equal measure. But something had changed. The galaxy was watching humanity now, not with contempt but with curiosity. Then the crisis emerged. The alert came through every communication channel simultaneously. A rogue planet had appeared from interstellar space, massive and ancient, moving at impossible speeds directly toward Velmar Prime, the homeworld of the Velmar species. 14 billion insectoid beings lived on that world, and they had 3 weeks before impact. The congregation mobilized immediately. Their greatest scientific minds calculated trajectories, analyzed the planet's composition, and attempted every technological solution they possessed. Gravitational tractors failed. Antimatter charges deflected off some kind of protective field. Quantum disruption beams simply vanished into the planet's surface like water into sand. Nothing worked. Dr. Ji-Wan studied the data from the Perseverance, her eyes growing wider with each passing hour. This isn't a normal planet. Look at these readings. The protective field operates on harmonic frequencies. It's not technology. It's organic, a living planet, Taeyang asked in disbelief. More than that, Ji-Wan said, pulling up geological surveys. The entire planetary structure resonates like a massive tuning fork. It's responding to vibrations, to frequencies. This planet is conscious in some way. On Axiom Prime, the Emergency Council met in constant session. Vector presided over heated debates as species argued over solutions. The Velmar representatives pleaded for help, their antennae drooping with despair. Their evacuation efforts could save maybe 1 million people. The rest would die. Then an elderly Velmar historian named Kelrin spoke up. Her voice was soft, translated through ancient vocal patterns that few bothered to learn anymore. There are legends among our people. Before we joined the congregation, before we embraced pure logic and abandoned our old ways. Stories of the Wanderer, a conscious planet that traveled the stars searching for something it lost. Myths are irrelevant, Vorkan snapped. We need practical solutions. But the myths say the Wanderer could be communicated with, Kelrin continued. Through the old songs, the ones we stopped singing 10,000 years ago, when we decided emotion was inefficient. Vector turned his crystalline gaze on the historian. These songs still exist? Fragments, pieces stored in ancient archives that nobody bothers to access anymore. They were considered cultural waste. But yes, they exist. A voice spoke up from the back of the chamber. It was Sekmar, the young Kryn who had been saved by Hayun's music. The humans communicated with a spatial anomaly using their music. Music born from emotion, not calculation. If the Velmar legends are true, if this planet responds to songs, then perhaps— Absolutely not, Vorkan interrupted. We will not rely on primitive human methods for a crisis of this magnitude. What other methods do we have? Sekmar challenged. We have tried everything logical, everything technological, everything we believe makes us superior. And we have failed. The humans succeeded where we could not. Maybe it's time we learned from them instead of dismissing them. The chamber erupted in argument. Species shouted in a dozen languages, translated into a cacophony of disagreement. But Vector raised his hand and silence fell. Summon the human delegation, he said quietly. When Hyunwoo arrived at the council chamber with his team, he found the entire congregation waiting. Every species, every faction, every voice that mattered in the galaxy. They all looked at him with expressions that ranged from hope to contempt to desperate calculation. Vector explained the situation. The rogue planet. The impossible speeds. The harmonic field that rejected all technology, the Velmar legends of songs that could speak to ancient wanderers. We are asking for your help, Vector said, and each word sounded like it cost him something precious. Your music saved 300 scientists. Can it save 14 billion? Hyunwoo looked at his team. Ji-Wan brilliant and cautious, Taeyang brave and impulsive, so men who could build miracles from spare parts. Hayun, still recovering from her ordeal but ready to try again, and Jae-sung, the pilot who had started all of this by playing Beethoven into the void. We'll try, Hyunwoo said simply, but we need access to the Velmar historical archives, every fragment of their ancient songs, and we need to work alongside Velmar historians who remember what those songs meant. Granted, Vector said immediately. For the next week, Hayun worked 18-hour days with Velmar historians in archives that hadn't been opened in millennia. The fragments of ancient songs were scattered across stone tablets, degraded data crystals and genetic memory patterns encoded in the Velmar themselves. The songs were nothing like human music. They operated on frequencies human ears couldn't naturally process, with harmonics that seemed to vibrate in more dimensions than should exist. But Hyun listened with more than her ears. She listened with her heart, trying to understand the emotion behind the alien melodies. "These songs are about loss," Hyun said to Kelrin one evening. "Every fragment we've found, they're all expressing grief, longing, the pain of something precious being gone forever." "The Wanderer lost its companion," Kelrin explained. "According to legend, there were two living planets dancing together through the cosmos. Then cosmic catastrophe destroyed one. The Wanderer has been searching for 10,000 years, unable to accept what was lost, unable to stop moving. So it's not attacking Velmar Prime," Jiwon realized. "It's just lost. Trapped in its own momentum, searching for something that doesn't exist anymore." "Can we tell it that?" Taeyang asked. "Can we make it understand?" "Maybe," Hyun said slowly. "But not by just repeating the old songs. Those express the Wanderer's pain, but they don't offer resolution. We need to give it something new. Something that acknowledges the loss but also offers peace, rest, an end to searching." She began to compose, blending Velmar harmonics with human emotional expression. It was the hardest thing she had ever attempted. The frequencies hurt to produce, the patterns were almost impossible to maintain, and the emotional weight of composing for 14 billion lives threatened to crush her. But she persisted. And slowly a new song took shape, one that spoke of loss and grief, yes, but also of acceptance, of finding peace not in recovering what was gone, but in honoring its memory and finally being still. With only 48 hours before impact, the Perseverance and a dozen Velmar ships positioned themselves in space between the rogue planet and Velmar Prime. Hyun sat at her console, surrounded by Velmar singers who would help her produce the frequencies needed for the song. "No pressure," Jae-sung muttered from his pilot station. "Just 14 billion lives depending on us getting this right." "Not helping," Hyun said, but she smiled despite her nerves. Hyunwoo opened a channel to all ships. "This is Commander Hyunwoo to all vessels. We're about to attempt communication with the Wanderer, using a combination of human and Velmar musical traditions. If this works, the planet will change course. If it doesn't, well, we'll have tried something beautiful before the end." He closed the channel and looked at Hyun. "Whenever you're ready." Hyun took a deep breath, placed her hands on the console, and nodded to the Velmar singers. Together, human and alien, they began to play. The music that emerged was unlike anything the galaxy had heard before. It combined human emotional depth with Velmar harmonic complexity, creating waves of sound that traveled through space itself. The song spoke of loss, of searching, of the pain of losing something irreplaceable. The Wanderer slowed. Its surface, which had been dark and featureless, began to pulse with bioluminescent patterns. Colors spread across its massive form in waves that synchronized with the music. It was listening. Hyun felt tears streaming down her face as she continued to play. She could sense the planet's grief, ancient and overwhelming, pressing against her consciousness like an ocean. This being had been alone for 10,000 years, searching for something it would never find. She changed the song. The grief remained, but she wove in new themes. Rest, peace, the honor of memory without the torture of endless searching. She played with every ounce of emotion she possessed, pouring her own experiences of loss into the music. Every goodbye she had ever said, every person she had ever missed, every dream that had died. And the Wanderer responded. The bioluminescent patterns on its surface began to form shapes, creating visual harmonics that synchronized with the music. It was singing back, a conversation across species, across biology, across the fundamental divide between human and living planet G1, deciphered the patterns, translating the Wanderer's response. It understands. It's saying it has searched long enough. It's ready to rest. But it doesn't know how to stop. The momentum is too great, too. The Grand Assembly Hall of Axiom Prime had never been so crowded. Every species in the congregation was present, along with representatives from independent worlds who had heard about the events at Velmar Prime. The air hummed with translated voices, debate, and something that hadn't existed in this chamber for centuries. Uncertainty. Commander Hyunwoo stood before the assembly once more. but this time felt different. 3 months ago, he had stood here and been dismissed as primitive. Now 47 species watched him with respect. Confusion, fear, and hope. Supreme Chancellor Vekthor rose from the central dais, his crystalline form catching the light in ways that seemed less cold than before. When he spoke, his voice carried throughout the chamber with perfect clarity. 3 months ago, humanity came before this assembly seeking membership. We denied them. We called them primitive. We assigned them the lowest tasks because we believed they had nothing of value to offer the galactic community. Vekthor paused, and in that silence, 14 billion Velmar lives spoke louder than words. We were wrong. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Some species nodded in agreement. Others shifted uncomfortably. A few, particularly the conservative Kryn military faction, radiated disapproval. Humanity has demonstrated a capability that none of our species possess, Vekthor continued. They have solved problems we declared unsolvable. They have communicated with forces we deemed incomprehensible. They did this not through superior technology or greater intelligence, but through something we dismissed as weakness, emotion. Dr. Jiwan stood beside Hyunwoo, watching the assembly's reactions with the careful eye of a scientist observing an experiment. She could see the divide forming, progressive species leaning forward with interest, conservative factions drawing back in resistance. The congregation was built on logic, mathematics, and rational thought, Vekthor said. These principles have served us well for millions of years, but humanity has revealed a blind spot in our understanding. There are forces in the universe that do not respond to logic. There are solutions that cannot be calculated. There are languages we have forgotten how to speak. He turned to face the human delegation directly. I propose that humanity be granted full membership in the Galactic Congregation, with all rights and privileges. Furthermore, I propose the establishment of a new field of study, cultural sciences, with Earth as the Academy headquarters. Let humanity teach us what we have forgotten. The assembly erupted, half in approval, half in protest. Species shouted over translators, creating a cacophony that would have been chaos if it wasn't so carefully managed by the station's systems. Bor Khan, the red-veined Kryn military commander, stood abruptly. His crystalline body seemed to pulse with anger. This is madness! The congregation is built on order, on logic, on the systematic understanding of the universe. If we accept this proposal, we abandon everything that makes us superior. We become weak. Weak? Sekmar stood from the Kryn delegation, the young scientist who had been saved by Hayun's music. Is it weak to save 300 lives? Is it weak to prevent the extinction of 14 billion people? The humans accomplished what our strength could not. Perhaps our definition of strength is incomplete. They got lucky, Vorkan countered. Twice. But luck is not a foundation for galactic policy. What happens when their emotional methods fail? When their intuition leads them astray? Logic is consistent. Emotion is chaos. Hyunwoo stepped forward and the chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to him, a human, a species that had been mocked, now speaking to the greatest powers in the galaxy as an equal. You're right, Hyunwoo said, and surprise rippled through the assembly. Emotion is chaotic. Intuition can be wrong. We humans make mistakes constantly. We feel too much, act impulsively, let our hearts guide us into trouble. He paused, letting his words sink in. But we also survive. We grow. We create beauty from chaos and find solutions in places pure logic would never look. You see our emotions as weakness, but they're also our strength. They drive us to try the impossible, to care about strangers, to reach out to the universe and believe it will reach back. We're not asking you to abandon logic, Jiwan added. We're asking you to recognize that logic alone is incomplete. Mathematics describes the universe, but it doesn't define it. There are forces that operate on principles your equations don't account for. The spatial anomaly, the wanderer. How many other problems exist that you can't solve because you refuse to explore solutions outside pure reason? A Velmar counselor stood, antennae vibrating with emotion. My species lived on Velmar Prime, all of us. Our children, our elders, our entire civilization. We would all be dead if the humans hadn't helped us. They worked with our historians to blend our ancient songs with their emotional understanding. They didn't just save us. They taught us something we had forgotten about ourselves. Another voice joined in, this time from a species that resembled flowing energy more than solid matter. The humans' methods opened new research possibilities for my people. We have been studying gravitational harmonics for a century, with limited success. Human music gave us insights that years of calculation did not provide. One by one, species began to speak, some in support, some in opposition, but all engaged with the question that humanity had forced them to face. Was there more to intelligence than pure logic? The debate raged for hours. Captain Tae Yang watched from the viewing gallery, where the rest of the Perseverance crew sat alongside their ship's civilian passengers. Hyun leaned against his shoulder, exhausted from the past weeks but unable to look away from the historic moment unfolding below. "Think they'll actually let us join?" Jae-sung whispered. "They have to," So-min replied. "We saved too many lives for them to just ignore us now." "Unless fear wins over gratitude," Tae-yang said quietly. "Some of these species have spent millions of years believing they perfected intelligence. Admitting they were wrong about something so fundamental? That's harder than you think." Finally, Vector called for order. The assembly quieted, and the Supreme Chancellor's voice rang out clear and final. "The congregation will now vote on the proposal, full membership for humanity, and the establishment of the Cultural Sciences Academy. Let each species register their decision." The voting took place through silent quantum communication, each species transmitting their choice simultaneously. Hyunwoo watched the display above the dais as numbers accumulated. The vote was close, far closer than he had hoped. When the final count appeared, the chamber fell silent. The measure passed, by a margin of only 4 votes, but it passed. Humanity was now a full member of the galactic congregation. Cheers erupted from some delegations, grumbling from others. But the decision was made, and by congregation law it was final. Vector turned to Hyunwoo. "Welcome, Commander. Earth now has a voice in galactic affairs. Use it wisely." "We will," Hyunwoo promised, "and we'll do our best to teach what we know about emotion, art, and intuition. But you'll have to be patient with us. We're still learning ourselves." In the days that followed, the galaxy began to change. Species started exploring their own forgotten cultural traditions. The Velmar opened archives that had been sealed for 10,000 years, rediscovering songs and stories their ancestors had created. The Kryn, despite Vorkan's opposition, sent scientists to study human music theory. Even the most logical species began to wonder, what else had they missed by dismissing emotion as inefficient? Hyunwoo was appointed Earth's first ambassador to the congregation, with a permanent seat on the council. Ji-won became the director of the new Cultural Sciences Academy, which received applications from hundreds of alien students eager to learn about art, music, and emotional expression. Hyun was offered a teaching position, helping alien species understand the relationship between emotion and harmonic frequencies. She accepted, knowing that her music had changed not just lives, but the entire galaxy's understanding of intelligence itself. Tae Yang and the Perseverance crew became explorers, seeking out problems that conventional technology couldn't solve. Wherever chaos reigned, wherever the impossible needed to happen, they went with music, emotion, and the stubborn human belief that caring was a strength, not a weakness. So-min divided her time between the academy and practical research, developing hybrid technologies that combined congregation science with human artistic principles. Her innovations opened fields of study that had never existed before, but not everyone accepted the change gracefully. Vorkan and his conservative faction watched the transformation with growing concern. After the vote, he approached Hyunwoo privately in one of Axiom Prime's quiet corridors. "You have opened a door," Vorkan said, his crystalline voice low and warning. "A door that may let in more than you understand. The universe is vast, Commander. Not all forces respond kindly to emotion. Not all chaos wants to be calmed. Some things are incomprehensible for a reason." "Is that a threat?" Hyunwoo asked carefully. "A warning," Vorkan replied. "We chose logic over emotion for reasons beyond mere efficiency. There are things in the dark between stars that feed on feeling, that grow strong on connection. By teaching the galaxy to embrace emotion again, you may be inviting danger we spent millions of years learning to avoid." He walked away, leaving Hyunwoo with questions that had no easy